There we go. Why do you want to be a justice on the Supreme Court?
Well, I think it's important that we have judges who are have the most experience and qualifications to sit on our Ohio Supreme Court.
And give me a brief rundown of your experience that makes you, or puts you in a good position qualification-wise.
Okay, I've been on the 11th District Court of Appeals for the last almost 14 years. And before that, I was the Assistant United States Attorney in Youngstown in the General Crimes Division, where I prosecuted all federal general crimes like bank robberies, gangs, drugs, cyber stalking case, all federal general crimes. And before that, I was the first assistant in the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office, where I prosecuted the capital murder cases, murder, rape, multi-million-dollar embezzlement cases, money laundering, any major high-profile case in Trumbull County. So I spent a lot of time in the courtroom for over 12 years as a state and federal prosecutor, and I believe that experience would be an asset on the Ohio Supreme Court, because no justice on the Ohio Supreme Court has that much experience in criminal law and procedure. And since half of the cases filed in the Supreme Court is criminal, I think it's important that we have justices with a background in that area.
Why aren't more people like you on the court now, do you think?
Because it's a difficult race. I mean, it's a statewide race, and it's hard to get there.
Out of curiosity, what death penalty cases were you involved in when you were back in Trumbull County?
I was on the State versus Getsy case and State versus Ibn Shakur.
Yeah, I witnessed Getsy. I had to serve as a witness on that one. I don't recall the other one.
That ended up in pleading in the middle of trial.
Ah, okay. The general election is nonpartisan, but obviously the primary, you ran as a Democrat, you received the Democratic nomination. I'm curious how, being a Democrat, how does that shape or affect how you work on the bench now, and how does that affect your work going in potentially a Supreme Court term?
Sure. I don't think that this race or any judgeship is about being a Democrat or Republican, because I think there's no place for politics in judicial decisions. I think it's important that judges decide the cases based upon the law that's written by our legislature and case law that we get from the Ohio Supreme Court. I don't believe we should allow politics to come in any decision that we make.
But you are a Democrat. I mean, how does that shape? I mean, it must shape you somehow when you're sitting on the bench.
I think more than anything, I think it's important that there's justice for all individuals, that everyone has access to the courts, and I believe it's always important that the public has confidence in our judiciary, and they believe that their cases are fairly heard and decided by all judges, and it doesn't matter what their party affiliation is. I know if somebody were to appear in front of me, I wouldn't ask them, are you a Democrat or a Republican? And I don't think that it's important when we're making those decisions, and it's likewise, I don't think it should be important when voters are making the decision of who they vote for to be on the Ohio Supreme Court.
Do you think party labels should appear on the ballot for judges in either the primary or the general? Does that play a role?
I'm not sure it should, because I think that what's more important is that people pay attention to the qualifications of the individuals and elect their judges that way. The problem is people don't pay that close of attention, but do we really want people making their decisions for political reasons as opposed to qualifications?
I know you're limited as a judge in what you can say about specific issues, but I'm asking all the candidates about the death penalty in particular. There is one person on the Supreme Court who is pretty open about his opinions on those kinds of things, and was when he was running. I'm curious, how do you approach the death penalty, or how would you approach the death penalty as an Ohio Supreme Court justice?
Well, the death penalty is the law here in Ohio, and it is the Supreme Court's job to review all death penalty cases. So I think it's important that we apply the law as it's written, regardless of any personal opinions or prejudice you might have, or bias. And I think we do have, we had a judicial commission, or a death penalty commission, that reviewed the death penalty and how it's applied here in Ohio. And I think as long as we're looking at the issues, making sure that it's fairly and impartially applied, you know, it's the court's job to review the case on the facts and evidence before it, applying the current law that we have.
You obviously have prosecuted death penalty
I have,
cases. I
I
mean, you're
have.
coming out of Trumbull County, one of the bigger counties in the state when it comes to the death penalty.
Mhm.
Have you had very many, and again, I don't want to delve into details or stuff I'm not supposed to delve into, but have you dealt with many appeals on death penalty cases in your position that you're in right now?
We don't, all the death penalty cases go directly to the Ohio Supreme Court.
Okay,
So the only issues we might see are post-conviction motions that come from the death penalty cases, but we don't see it that frequently.
okay. I don't want to turn this into an attack situation, but why are you better qualified or better suited for this position than the person you're running against?
I believe that this race is about experience and qualifications. It's important that we elect judges with the most qualifications and experience. The Ohio State Bar Association Judicial Commission did an evaluation of the candidates for the Ohio Supreme Court. They did a thorough background check. They evaluated our performance as judges, and I believe that they looked into not only the references that we provided, but that they did their own investigation into things like our judicial temperament, our character, integrity, as well as our judicial and legal experience and knowledge. I'm very proud to have received a highly recommended rating from the Ohio State Bar Association's Judicial Commission, and my opponent, on the other hand, was rated not recommended. And so I think it's important for voters to know this and to recognize that they want to elect not someone based upon their name, but on their experience and qualifications.
Did he, I'm trying to remember, he didn't participate in that process, did he? Do you
Yes,
know?
he did.
He did participate, okay.
Yes.
I haven't gotten around to that yet, so, okay. What do you say to the average voter out there who's going to be totally focused on the presidential election, maybe the Senate race, and maybe not even voting on the Ohio Supreme Court race? What do you say to them?
Well, the Ohio Supreme Court is such an important function here in the state of Ohio, and they decide cases that affect all of us every day. And it's important that voters pay attention to who their candidates are and vote in this race, because the judicial candidates, whether it's at the Ohio Supreme Court or on the trial court levels, play an important role in our criminal justice system and our civil justice system. And it's important that voters elect the best judges we can, because they are public servants and they're serving the voters.
How many elections did you run in?
This is my fourth. I've been elected 3 times to the 11th District Court of Appeals.
And that was the only, you hadn't run for office before that?
I ran for precinct committee person, and I won those seats. So I was a precinct committee person for 10 years
Okay.
before I became a judge.
But you went from, were you appointed to the appeals court, or
No.
you were elected initially?
Right. I was the assistant United States attorney in Youngstown when I decided to run for this, for the Court of Appeals, and I resigned there under the Hatch Act. We're prohibited from doing political activity as an assistant U.S. attorney, so I resigned and ran for the Court of Appeals.
Do you live in Youngstown?
I live north of Youngstown in Trumbull County.
Okay. I'm trying to think, who else is on the court right now who's from that area? French is from up in that area, isn't she?
I think she may have grown up in the Columbiana County area.
Okay. Does having, I mean, being from Northeast Ohio, does that play a role in this race, or should it play a role in this race?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
How do you think the presidential election is going to affect the races for the Ohio Supreme Court?
Well, I'm hoping that a lot of voters turn out and vote. I think there's a high profile on this, the presidential race, and people should be very concerned about who we're electing to be president. Likewise, we should vote in every race that's out there, not just the presidential year.
Can you, in kind of a everyday language explain kind of your philosophy towards judiciary? I mean, you hear a lot of talk about activist judges and creating law or setting law from the bench. What's your kind of, in layman's terms, your judicial philosophy?
Well, I believe that as judges, we are a co-equal branch of government, but we interpret and enforce the law. We don't write it, and I think it's important that we respect the constitutionality of statutes and apply them to the facts before us. I don't think it's the court's role to write the law from the bench, and I've spent the last 14 years of my career doing just that, as far as applying the law as it's written, not how I think it should be or what I think it should be. I think it's important that judges respect the limitations of their role, and not overstep their bounds. And I think you can't decide cases based upon what you want the law to be. You have to rely on what it is and apply it to the facts.
You see anything that you would like to change about the Ohio Supreme Court, or?
Change, like, in what way?
I mean, you're running for justice, Supreme Court justice. Is there something wrong with the court now? I mean, is it?
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with the court as we have it, but I think it's important that we have a balance on the court with experience and qualifications. And right now, none of the justices have as much criminal law procedure experience as I have, and I think that I would be an asset to the court, and my experience would help them when they're deciding some of the cases that they look at. In light of the fact that half of the cases are criminal that are filed at the Supreme Court, I think that my experience would be helpful.
That's what I had. Anything else you want to make sure voters know about you?
Just that I have received the highest ratings from every bar association that has evaluated me. The Ohio State Bar Association rated me highly recommended. The 4 bar associations and the Cleveland Judge for Yourself gave me excellent rating, and I'm very proud of that. And I would look forward to serving the citizens of Ohio on the Ohio Supreme Court.